Hey YouTube, this is Guy. What we have on the table today is something a little bit different. It's loaned to me from a viewer who sent me several watches in the past, and I'm really grateful for that, so thank you very much. What we're looking at here is the Red Star Mechanical Chronograph with Moonphase, reference 7756G-D. What is so interesting about this watch is it has a lot of complications at a pretty affordable price point. LongIslandWatch.com is probably the only place that I know of that I regularly or even routinely buy watches from that has this watch, and their price on it is $299. That's where I would probably get it from if I was shopping for one of these. They don't have it on Amazon or any of the other places that I routinely buy watches from. So, Long Island Watch, $299. For $299, can you get a mechanical, hand-wind chronograph with Moonphase? I don't think so. Admittedly, I have not shopped around a lot for this particular type of watch. It's not something that I've wanted to add to my stable. However, when this viewer sent me the list of watches that they had that they'd let me borrow, this was on the list, and I said, hey, well, that's kind of cool. I've never seen one of these watches before. I've never seen the Red Star brand before. A Moonphase watch is new to me. A lot of stuff going on there that interested me in this watch. So I said, yeah, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and send it over to me. So that's how I ended up getting this watch in my hands as opposed to, purchasing one myself. Yeah, it's not something that I probably would have added to my stable, but it's really cool. I've had it for a few days. I've enjoyed checking it out, and I'm really happy to show it to you guys. So yeah, can you beat $299 plus or minus $300? I don't think so. Again, I haven't spent a lot of time looking around for similar watches with these complications. Let me know down in the comments if you guys know of another one. Maybe I should put it on my radar and check it out. But pretty cool watch for the price is the point that I'm trying to get at. Now let's go ahead and go over the specs on this watch real quick. Get that out of the way. What we're looking at is a 40 millimeter case diameter, not including the crown or the chronograph pushers, of course. We have a lug width here where the strap attaches at 20 millimeters and a thickness of 15 millimeters once we include this domed acrylic crystal. It is a little bit thick, it's a little bit chunky, but when you have all of those complications, the chronograph, the Moonphase, the date, when you have all of that sandwiched into this little case, of course, it's going to have to be thick. The final dimension that we'll touch on is the lug-to-lug from top to bottom, or if you follow my channel, you know the dimension that I like to call a watch's wingspan. Measures in at about 48 millimeters. So there's your overall dimensions on this watch. Overall, the sizing on it is quite good. It's a size 40 millimeter case, 20 millimeter lugs that I particularly enjoy in tool watches. For other watches, I'd actually probably go a little bit smaller, would be my preference, but because this watch has so many complications, because you want it to continue to be legible, having it at 40 millimeters is perfectly appropriate. Now, one thing I will say in regard to the size of this watch, the dimensions, that it comes in at 40 millimeters, but still kind of looks a little bit bigger, is something of an optical illusion that we see in watches all the time. And the reason is that there's really no bezel at all, so you're looking at the entire dial taking up the vast majority of that 40 millimeters. When you have a very big dial with a small surrounding area of the case, and you know what we mean there is the bezel, it just makes it look bigger. Add on top of that the lugs, and you can see, and I'll bring it in here, these are very thin, delicate lugs. They don't have a lot of mass or a lot of shoulder on the sides here riding into the case. So it gives the case more of a circular, more bold and stand out kind of feel to me. So while we can say that this is a 40 millimeter watch, because of both the thickness and the proportions and the design of the case, it does feel a little bit bigger than that because of the fact that it's almost all dial. So keep that in mind if you're thinking to yourself, well, typically I don't like 40 millimeter watches, typically that's too big for me, then this might feel too big despite the fact that the measurements fall within a comfortable range that you might be used to. Anyway, moving along, this watch features a Chinese Seagull movement. It's a 22 jewel mechanical hand winding movement. It has a date, it has Moonphase, and it has chronograph. It's got a 40-hour power reserve, and one kind of negative about it, and maybe it's just something that you can't can't have in a watch with all these complications. I don't exactly know, but it's not a hacking movement. You can see the subdial over at the 9 o'clock position is the running seconds. So, currently it's coming up on 60 seconds, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. That's your current counting seconds. If we were to pull the crown out, it doesn't hack, it doesn't stop that. The watch continues to run while we spin the crown to set the time. Mild negative. I mean, there's lots of watches, particularly in this, more affordable Seiko range, that the movement doesn't hack, and it's not a big deal. I just prefer it if my watches do stop running when I pull the crown out in order to set the time, so that I can set the time extremely precisely to a website like time.is or some other known accurate time source. It's, part of my... I hesitate to use the word obsessive compulsive because I'm not, and I feel like that diminishes the people that actually do suffer from that disorder. But I do like to have my clocks synced up as closely as possible, and then I will routinely check their accuracy. That's just me. It's just what I do. When you can't hack a watch's movement, makes that all but impossible. I mean, I guess I could set the time and remember that it's 34 seconds off of the current atomic time, and then whenever I would go back to check the time, I would have to do some math to figure out how much fast or slow my watch is running. But anyway, I digress. It's not really that important. I just wanted to let you know this movement, while it does seem to be pretty good, does not hack. Now, on the back of the watch, we do have a display case back, and you can see that the movement is actually very nice looking. It's very attractive. It's very well decorated, particularly when we talk about a movement at this price point. Very cool looking movement. Of course, there's no automatic oscillating rotor, because this is not an automatic watch. It doesn't self-wind. You do have to hand wind it every probably 2 days or thereabouts. But I did want to give you a quick look at the display case back, in particular, that movement in there. Very, very nice looking movement. Now, there's a couple of other interesting or kind of almost, weird things about this watch and how you operate it. Number one, chronograph. It works as you would expect. The top pusher starts the chronograph. As you can see, the main blue hand here is the chronograph counter, and it works exactly like you would expect every other chronograph. You push that button again to stop it, and the bottom pusher resets it. This subdial over at the 3 o'clock position is the current chronograph minute counter, and it's a 30-minute subdial. You don't have a 12 or 24 hour. Generally, it's a 12-hour subdial to count the chronograph's running hours. So basically, this chronograph is only good for 30 minutes. After that, it will flip back over, and you'll lose your count. So if you're trying to time anything over 30 minutes, you can't do it with this chronograph. I'm guessing most people probably don't even use the chronograph, and if they do, they're just timing very short things. So probably not going to be a factor for the majority of people that use a chronograph in general or this watch. But that's how the chronograph functions. It's very straightforward. It's very basic. The subdial up at the 12 o'clock position, which is kind of being blocked by our hour hand a little bit, but you can see that it's pointing, the little blue hand there is pointing at the 11th. That's because it's October 11th. That is, your date subdial. And then down at the bottom, we, of course, have the current moon phase, and you can see right there we're at like 3/4 of a full moon, roughly, right? Now, the way that you set that stuff is not by the crown. You would generally think you pull out the crown to some position and you would set the date. Not being familiar with Moonphase watches at all, I'm not even sure how other Moonphase watches handle the setting of the Moonphase. But the way that this watch works is pretty interesting. On the left-hand side of the case, there are two recessed buttons, one here and one here. You get yourself a little pusher, and to set the date, you just push that little button with a ballpoint pen would probably work, a little tool that you might use to push out spring bars, any little pusher. You just push that and it clicks the date through. So very, very simple, very straightforward. On the Moonphase, you have another little pusher down at the bottom left here at roughly the 8 o'clock position. Now, what you need to do on the Moonphase is you need to go find a calendar. Obviously, they're all over online. You don't need a paper calendar hanging on your wall. I don't know too many people that still have those. But you go ahead and you click that button until, let's say you know the full moon. In this case, our last full moon was on the 5th of October. So you click that around until the moon falls dead center in the middle of that little window. And now I know it's the 11th, so you'd give it 6 clicks or 6 days past the full moon. And that's how we went ahead and we set the current moon phase. Now, as I understand it, watching, actually it was Long Island Watch over there, Mark made a demonstration of a couple of different Red Star watches, but he talked about this one too. He pointed out that the phases of the moon are roughly something like 29 and a half days. So it's going to go out of sync, right? There's 30 or 31 days in every month. If you're in a 30-day month, it's really going to only be out of sync by about half a day, so you wouldn't need to correct it. But every couple of months, it's going to be a few clicks or a few days out of sync, and you're going to want to reset it, just because the entire rotation of the moon is not on a 30-day calendar. It's on a slightly less 29.5-day calendar, I believe is what Mark had said in that video. So, keep that in mind. You do need to reset the moon phase. I don't know if there are, and I suspect there probably are, more accurate moon phase watches out there, but I am sure if I had to put money on it, that they're exorbitantly expensive. But again, I don't really know. I've never shopped around or really considered adding a moon phase complication watch to my collection. It's just not something that I particularly need, but again, I'm happy to have checked this one out. It's pretty cool in hindsight. So what else can I tell you about this watch? It does have a very nicely domed crystal, and it is acrylic. It's not a mineral crystal, it's not sapphire crystal. What that means is it's probably going to show a lot of wear and tear. Now this one that my buddy here let me borrow, it actually looks really, really good, with the small, unfortunate exception, and I'm not even sure you'll be able to see it too well. There's a little teeny tiny crack up there at about the 1 o'clock position in the acrylic. When it's on your wrist and you're just looking down at it, you don't even notice it. You kind of have to really scrutinize it. I'm guessing he bumped it or something. Just got a little tiny crack in the crystal. My point is that this crystal is going to be somewhat fragile. You're going to want to be careful with this watch. It's not going to be the type of watch that you're going to take out and bang around all the time. Just because of the fact that this is an acrylic crystal. But the domed portion of it, and I love domed crystals, it looks really good. It's very, very legible. It's very transparent. It doesn't get a whole ton of glares. You can see my studio light there kind of glaring in it. I mean, that's not bad when we're talking about super harsh direct lighting. You don't see, like, straight above us I have a ceiling fan. You don't see my ceiling fan reflecting in the crystal at all. Very legible, very, very clear, but you do have to take care of it. Now, acrylic, I believe, is pretty easy to buff scratches out. I'm pretty sure that there's a buffing compound that you can get and rub it out. I'm not familiar with acrylic crystals on watches that much, but I am very much into the aquarium hobby, and I do know, having years and years ago working in an aquarium pet store, that if an acrylic fish tank were to get a scratch on the viewing panel, you could buff that scratch out relatively easily. That's one of the upsides. Downside, it's fragile. Upside, you can fix it. I'm assuming that applies here in terms of getting scuffs and scratches and whatnot. Now the case on this watch, while we have talked about the dimensions, and I did point out that the case really has nothing to speak of as far as a bezel is concerned surrounding the outer edge here, and it does have some very small, delicate lugs. It also has what they want to call a vintage distressed or hammered case, and if we look at the finish on this case, you can see it is all marked up. That's the finish that it comes with from the factory. I'm not a huge fan of watches, or anything really, it doesn't even have to be watches, that are made to look vintage, but they're brand new. Another way of expressing that is I'm not really a fan of a faux or fake patina. That said, it doesn't look bad on this watch. It just kind of, I don't know, it feels like it's pretending to be something. It's pretending to be a vintage watch when it's not a vintage watch. It's a brand new watch. I want my brand new watches to look like brand new watches. That's just me. That's my personal taste. It's my personal style. Not saying anybody is wrong if they like that look. I mean, I remember a little while ago they were selling jeans brand new for some, giant sum of money from department stores that were like made to look dirty right off of the rack. Like, for me, no. I mean, I don't want to wear dirty jeans anyway, but if I was the type of guy that wore dirty jeans, I'd want it to be like, the wear and tear that I put on it. Same thing goes with my watches. If my watch is going to look all distressed and vintage and old, I want it to actually be that. I want it to be that I put it through those paces. And not that it just comes with this fake patina look. But again, it doesn't look bad. It's just not my personal style and preference. So I'm not going to say like, oh, it's an awful finish. It looks terrible. It doesn't look terrible. I just know in my mind that it's not a real patina. So I dislike that. The case back, and I did show you guys the movement here. I just wanted to mention the crystal on the case back, while the display window crystal is acrylic, the back one is a mineral crystal. So I'm guessing it's going to be a little bit more durable in terms of scratches and scuffs, but you know, who really cares? It's not like you're hardly ever looking at that. A few little scratches here and there is going to be almost meaningless. What we really care about is the crystal on the display panel. But I did want to point that out. Now, the next thing and the main thing to talk about on this watch, now that we've covered all that other stuff, is going to be the dial, the handsets, you know, the aesthetics of what we mostly look at several hours, you know, or several times every day on the hour just to tell the time. What is the dial? What do I think of the dial? What do I think of the handsets? I think that, you know, overall it's a pretty nice looking dial. The handsets, okay, let's take a look at the hands first. You have these stainless steel hands that are lume filled, hour and minute hand. Your current running second hand sub-dial over here has no lume on it, so in the dark you're not going to be able to tell the active seconds. But yeah, your hour hands and your minute hands are lume filled. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to roll in some video of the lume. It's pretty decent lume. I don't know if it's Super Luminova or some other trade name. I don't know what brand the lume is. That it comes from China leads me to believe that it's probably some lower quality lume than you might expect from a more, I don't know, higher end or more expensive brand. Regardless though, it seems to work pretty good. The lume on the hands is significantly brighter and more prominent than the lume on the hour markers. I haven't tested as far as, you know, how long does the lume last. I just gave it a really strong charge and checked it out in a dark room for a little while. My overall impression with it is that it's better than some, but not as good as others. In particular, we all know that Seiko lume is legendary, I guess, for lack of a better word. This lume's okay, it works. So yeah, we have the lume on the hour hands, we also have lume on the hour markers. Again, the hour hands there are stainless steel, they look pretty nice. The running seconds hand is blued, the chronograph counter hand also blued, and the date hand up there is blued. They look very, very nice with that rich, deep royal blue finish. The chronograph main counter hand is also blued. Interesting thing about that, on the counterbalance side, you can probably see it. It has the hammer and sickle emblem. Probably going to raise a lot of debate amongst people on whether or not they would or wouldn't want to wear a watch that has that symbolism in it. I'm not really going to get into that here. I'm just talking about the quality of the watch, so I'll leave that discussion for you guys in the comment section. I did want to point out, though, that aside from the Red Star symbol, which is a common Chinese emblem, of course it has the hammer and sickle emblem down at the counterbalance side of the chronograph hand. The rest of the dial, if we look at those sub-dials up close here, they are recessed ever so slightly, and they have sort of like a, if I can get really close in there, sort of a radial pattern texture to them, and I know I'm a little shaky because I'm zoomed so in, so forgive me, but I want to give you a look at those sub-dials. They're nice in that, again, they have a nice little radial pattern or texturing in them. The printing on them, despite the fact that they're pretty small, is quite good from what I can tell. And despite the fact that, you know, again, they are kind of small, I find them to be very legible. In fact, the chronograph's running minutes counter, because it's a 30-minute subdial and they're not jamming in so many little graduations between every single 5-minute indicator, because it's not a 60-second dial and everything's scrunched in, very legible, even to my relatively poor eyesight. So that's a plus. The subdial for the Moonphase, we'll try to get in here real tight. It is recessed down inside a little bit, and at this angle with this current lighting, it looks like it's kind of hard to see because it's casting some shadows there. I can say that in person that's not a problem. I don't have any issues being able to read what's going on in that Moonphase dial. Down right below it, you have these kind of little cloud outline thingies, and then there's some Chinese text there. I believe that says something about for the people. I don't remember exactly what that text says, some sort of Chinese slogan or something to that effect. We do have a really nice intricate outer chapter ring with 15, 30, and 45 minute markers and a 60 up at the top, of course. Very, again, intricate. And of course you would expect it to be because it's a chronograph watch. You're going to want to know, down to like quarter or fifth seconds or whatever that's measuring if you're going to use the chronograph as an actual tool. Then, of course, you have the main indices, and they're kind of this green. And then, of course, it's a bright glowy green in the dark, which we already saw the lume. The numerals themselves are very, legible. It's a pretty typical font. They're big. Of course, the bottom of the 6 and the top of the 12 are kind of abbreviated because of the subdials, and there's no numerals at the 3 or the 9. But overall, I do like this dial. I like the layout of it. At the very edges of the dial, and you're not going to be able to see it, they're kind of domed. The dial, I believe, is kind of domed too. So you have like a dome on the dial, and then you have a dome on the crystal. You get quite a bit of distortion at the very outer edges because of that domed crystal, and underneath it sort of a domed dial. That said, I think that looks kind of neat. It's not like it's distorting on anything that you need to be able to read. It doesn't mess up the legibility at all. It just gives it kind of like this, again, distorted or almost wavy look out at the edges in particular, where your crystal is curving and where the dial underneath is curving. But yeah, you're not really going to be able to see that too much on the camera, I'm guessing. So I did want to point that out. If you get one of these watches and you notice it yourself, you're going to be like, why didn't Guy mention that? Well, there you go. I did. Last thing to talk about on this watch is the strap. I'm going to go ahead and zoom the camera out slightly so that we can see the strap a little bit better, and I'll give you a look at that. Give me 1 sec. So this watch is currently wearing a brown leather strap. It looks like it's an ostrich grain. I don't know if it's true ostrich or if it is, just like an imprint to make it look like ostrich on calf leather. On the back of the watch, strap, we can see that it says De Beer Paris ostrich grain handcrafted. This is not the strap that it comes on, so why am I telling you so much information about it? The viewer that loaned me this watch put it on this strap, but he did include the strap that it came with. I think that the strap that it came with, which I'm going to bring in here, is really a pretty decent strap, and I almost would consider keeping it on this strap. Now, I'm guessing that the viewer that loaned this to me just liked this particular look and didn't change it because the strap isn't decent quality. It is pretty decent quality, and I'm going to give you a nice close look at it. So basically what you got here is a nice chocolatey brown. I believe it's just genuine leather, quote unquote, which is probably one of the lower quality leather materials. But nice chocolatey brown. Doesn't seem to have a whole lot of taper. Maybe just a hair up at this end. It does seem a little bit thicker, so I'm guessing it tapers down to from 20 up at the lug end down to probably 18 down towards the buckle end. Decent, not super high contrast, but a little bit of a contrast on the stitching, and a nice water resist was what is labeled there, lining on the back side. On the other end, the buckle end, we have the same basic material, same stitching, a sewn-in keeper along with a free floating keeper, the same lining. The hardware or the buckle is not signed or decorated with anything, but it seems like a nice decent quality buckle. It's not overly large like a Panerai buckle. I don't really care for that. I like my buckles to be kind of slim, and this one fits the bill perfectly. So overall, the strap that comes with this watch, I mean, I'd use it, it's pretty solid. And again, I'm guessing that the viewer that loaned this to me just changed it out because he liked the look of the other one. I can't imagine that he changed it out because he had a problem with the quality of this one. The quality of this is much nicer than the majority of leather straps that come on watches that I'm used to, particularly when we talk about a brand like Seiko. If you saw my review of the older generation Seiko cocktail time, the strap that thing came on was abysmal. I mean, this is a keeper in my mind. So my opinion is if you're going to get this watch, you're going to save money in not needing to replace the strap, so long as you like the coloration and the styling of this strap. I do, personally. So yeah, that's basically everything to see about this watch overall. As far as, the design and the look of it, I like it. I'm pretty impressed. you know, there is obviously going to be a little bit of controversy about this watch when we talk about the country of origin and some of the symbolism and emblems that are on this watch. Would I wear a watch like that? You know, for me, probably not. Just there's certain things that I wouldn't probably feel comfortable wearing. Representing, if you will, that would probably be one of them for me. Whether or not that applies to anyone else is, you know, you're well within your rights to wear and do whatever you want. I don't care. But, you know, that's just my 2 cents. If we remove that aspect of this watch, though, overall, I'm impressed with it. Again, at the price point of roughly $300. Where else are you going to get a mechanical hand-winding chronograph that features a Moonphase? The word was escaping me there. You know, I'm not sure that you can, again. So, yeah, it's definitely gets a thumbs up from me. So that's it. That's my review of the Red Star Mechanical Chronograph with Moonphase, reference number 7756G-D. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. As always, thank you for tuning in. Down in the notes or description of this video is a list of ways you can help support the channel. I'd appreciate it if you participate in any of those. And I will be back again soon with another video. Take care now. Bye.